Hi. Hi, welcome. So I'm back with Books and Tuxedos. I am here after a 2-year hiatus from YouTube to tell you about the books that I've read in 2026 so far. So this is going to be the mid-year book what is this thing called? Mid-year Book Freakout Tag. That's what we're doing today. So first I just wanted to go over kind of some of my stats so far for the year, some of my accomplishments of my goals I've set for myself, where I'm at with my reading, and then we'll get into the questions of the tag. So the first thing I wanted to go over was just how many books I've read so far. So currently I've read 56 books so far this year. I do usually have a goal of a year of reading 100 books a year, which is pretty attainable for me, as long as I'm prioritizing reading most days. That tends to get met, so far happy with that. And then the top genres that I've read so far this year have been horror, general fiction, romance, fantasy, and then some classics. And then for the books I own but have not read, another thing I have been, attempting to track is how many books I have on my physical TBR that are unread. So start of this year I had 318 books that I own but have not read. It's now up to 353 books. So it hasn't gone down, but I have been reading. I might be due for another unhaul soon, honestly. Sometimes I just, I find a deal at the library or the thrift store and, I might get to it. So we'll see on that. Another thing I have been trying to keep up with has been new releases. So far this year I've read 11 books that came out in the year 2026, so pretty happy with that. I do want to try to continue to pick up new releases when they come out, even if that's trying to request more on NetGalley and actually submitting my reviews, or just putting holds at the library, just because it's fun to be, I guess, in the know, especially with like some horror and thrillers, if you read them very close to the release date, just kind of feeling like part of that, at least for like anticipated releases. And then another thing I do track is the books I've read by BIPOC authors, so books I've read written by authors of color. So far this year I've read 21 books out of the 56 books that I've read have been by BIPOC authors. I definitely want to get better at that for the rest of the year, because 21 out of 56 is not where I would want to be with that. So definitely just something I am going to keep in mind when I'm building TBRs, picking books in the future. I feel like I have been reading fairly diversely as far as like picking up. I've been reading a lot more like LGBTQ, whatever, like authors within that community, but I think that a lot of them have happened to be, white trans authors, for example. So I do want to try to prioritize BIPOC authors within those communities as well when I'm reading, just to obviously diversify my reading. So that's pretty much it for the just kind of general stats, and then I want to get into the questions for the book tag. So the first question is, what is the best book that you've read so far this year? This was definitely difficult to narrow down. I wanted to use this time just to kind of tell you about some of my top reads, honorable mentions, if you will. I actually had 15 books so far this year that I rated 5 stars out of the 56 I read, so definitely has been a very successful reading year, just as far as picking up things that I have enjoyed more than years past, I feel like. I mean, there's definitely been some that have not been great, but I feel like overall, like, my average rating is probably higher than it has been in years past, which I did not check what I was at before I started filming this. I guess that would have been good to include in the other part. Anyways, here we are. So I'm going to tell you about my honorable mention books, and then I'll tell you about my favorite book so far this year. So first book I really want to mention is going to be East of Eden by John Steinbeck. I really enjoyed this. This was definitely one of the first classics I've picked up. I went into this year with a goal of trying to read more classics, especially classics I've been more intimidated by, or just really thought I would not be, like understanding or getting the value in, or, whatever. But just to tell you a little bit about what East of Eden is about, if you are unfamiliar. So this does follow interconnected stories of two families in California. So it's in Salinas Valley specifically, and just the way that he describes California in this really makes me want to visit California. His writing in general is just really good. Like, I don't know how to describe it. I mean, it's beyond really good. It's something that you just have to experience. The characters are definitely like characters that stay with you. So if you really like following a character throughout their entire life, like family dynamics, stories, things like that, I definitely suggest picking this up. And it wasn't like difficult to follow with the writing necessarily at all. Like it still read like a general fiction book you would pick up now. It didn't feel not accessible, really. So it is a Cain and Abel retelling. So my knowledge of Cain and Abel before reading this was watching Supernatural, and that was it. I don't think you need that much other reference, but like being familiar with that story would help you understand this for sure. But yeah, I just love this so much, and I don't really know how else to describe what I like about it. Maybe I just really like mess, and there's a bit of mess in here, so I was thoroughly entertained. And then next up on my list of just honorable mentions for best books I've read is I, Medusa by Ayanna Gray. This is a Medusa retelling, and I don't read a lot of mythology books, but I really liked this one. It is basically just another telling of Medusa's origin story. So there are some tough parts in here. I mean, definitely like triggers for sexual assault, childhood sexual assault, things like that. But the writing in general, but the mythology stuff in here, it's very accessible. Like, almost is written YA, and I'm not sure if this is, I don't think this actually is, it's not YA because there's some really difficult scenes in here, but the way that it's written is, it kind of is in that style, which I have seen people say as a criticism of it, but I feel like it just made the story easier to understand in my opinion. So I did really like the characters in here. I loved her relationship with the siblings, and then the representation was really cool with her hair becoming the snakes, and the main character being a black woman as well, and just the different representation and things that people are going through in real life when it comes to that. So that was really interesting. I would definitely pick up more from this author. I haven't heard of her other books, but after reading this, I think that I will check them out. And another one I have to mention, I actually read this recently, and I do need to return this to the library. So this is Nothing Tastes as Good by Luc Dumas. I heard of his other book that came out, I don't know if it was last year, it might have been like 3 years ago, honestly. It had like a dinosaur on the cover. The paleontologist says it right there, guys. Anyways, I haven't read from him before, but I have heard of this author. But to tell you about this, so basically what this is, it's a horror book, and it is about a new weight loss drug like GLP-1 helping people with weight loss that has really bad side effects that turns people into cannibals. So we follow our main character. His name is Emmett. Fellow Emmett, on his journey, signing up for this trial, starting to take the drug, getting results from it, you know, and feeling like happy he's losing weight and everything, and then how it takes a turn for the worse. I will say that this is it is a horror book, but it's much more literary. Like, it's not like in the scenes that are very gruesome. Like, things are described, but it's not like horror in that way, I guess I'll say. There is some really, like, not like, well, I guess tough too, because there's a lot of like stories of his childhood abuse and things surrounding food. I did think that the representation of binge eating in here seemed really good. I mean, it's not something that I personally struggle with, but it's just something that I haven't really seen talked about, even in fiction, that often. So that was nice to see represented. Another thing, on a much less serious note, that I liked about this was the author's references to Pokemon. The character is obsessed with playing Pokemon throughout his childhood, and there's like constantly references to it, so I did appreciate that. But yeah, overall, I don't really know what to explain about what really worked for me with this, because a lot of the characters are actually unlikable for a lot of reasons too. But it was just such a fun concept. And yeah, I had a fun time with this. And then another book that I wanted to mention is Mostly Dead Things by Kristen Arnett. So this is, I think this is classified as horror. If not, it's like speculative, fiction. There's definitely like some gross bits in this, so just to tell you a bit about what this is about. So this girl, Jessa, I'm sorry, I will remember a lot of things about a book, but the main character's name sometimes not always. So this follows Jessa. She is in Florida, which also matters because there's very much like Florida vibes throughout this whole book, which is very entertaining. So her parents own a taxidermy shop. So the start of this book, she finds her dad had committed suicide in the shop, and she stumbles across him. So the whole book basically is following like her going through grief with that, her mom's reaction to that, her brother's reaction to that, and there's just a lot of messy family dynamics. I don't know if it says on the back her brother withdraws and showed his wife. Okay, so it does say on the back, so I'll tell you about it. So her brother is married, right? But the brother's wife is in love with the main character. Like, the main character is in love with the brother's wife, and there was just this ongoing affair with that, and there's a lot of mess. Was one of the things that I liked about this book, just for the entertainment factor in it. And there are definitely some sad parts with, you know, grappling with loss and things like that. But there's also a lot of funny parts. I just really liked this main character's sense of humor, this author's writing. I would definitely pick up more from this author, and I do recommend this one. And then the last honorable mention before I tell you about my top book of the year is going to be Disappoint Me by Nicola Dion, or Nicola Dinan. It might be Dinan and not might be saying that wrong. I apologize. So this this is about, like, follows two main characters, and it's really revolving around like messy relationships and inner friend issues that go on. This does follow a 30-year-old trans woman. So at the start of the story, she's at a New Year's Eve party and she falls down the stairs, and then she has this realization of like, I need to turn my life around. So she is basically starting to look for getting into a relationship, right? She's kind of thinking that like being in a monogamous relationship is gonna fix her life in some type of way. So we switch between perspectives of her new boyfriend, Vincent, and then the girl's name is Max, and then we find out like some juicy secrets about Vincent's past and like how her and the friend group come about this information. So there's honestly there's a lot of drama, there's a lot of mess, but the writing is so good. There were I tabbed a lot in here. I have not read this her other book. I think it's called Bellies. I'll put it here so you know what I'm talking about. But I've heard really good things about that too, and I also want to check that out. But if you just love great writing and kind of messy relationships where you maybe don't like every character and they all are just very, flawed and living life, I definitely recommend picking this one up. Into my top book so far this year, I kept thinking about all the books I've read and kind of what stands out in my mind as my top book, and I definitely have to go with The Count of Monte Cristo. I read this back in, you can see my tabs, I read this in February and really enjoyed it. If you are unfamiliar, The Count of Monte Cristo follows Edmond Dantes. So he is going to take over being captain on this ship. He's about to get married. He's engaged. He's super happy for life. And then these fuck-ass people fuck him over. And then he gets locked up in prison for 14 years. And then he escapes. And then he gets his revenge. That's really all you need to know about this, pretty much. If you obviously like revenge stories, definitely pick this up. I think the main thing about this that's intimidating is the brick of it all, This did take me the entire month of February to read. I kind of set myself goals of reading so many pages a day, but it wasn't something that I really dreaded picking up because I wanted to know what was going to happen. Like, it's actually kind of juicy. Like, this seems like the version of reality TV they had back then, basically, because I just wanted to know what was going to happen. And if you're the type of person when, like, people make jokes or, like, you are watching comedy or something and someone has, like, a bit, right? If you don't like it when the bit just keeps on going, then maybe you wouldn't like this. I don't know why I'm making that comparison, but it does feel like that. It's like he's getting his revenge and it keeps that's it. That's what is going on, I mean, obviously there's a lot of different factors within that and characters that are introduced and different complexities that go along with that, but that's basically the whole thing, and you're just in it for the ride of all of that. So I really love the writing in here. It was definitely readable. Like, it was not unaccessible, really. So I'll talk about it later, but I did also read Les Mis this year, and I struggle a little bit more with that one just because of, I feel like, all the French names, which, I mean, was also a thing with this. But yeah, once I got my characters down, I was pretty invested in this. If you are going to read this, I do recommend doing like I'll show you I had a sticky and I just like kind of put all the characters, and then there wasn't an order to my tabs. Maybe there should have been, but I was not that organized. I just tabbed things that I thought were entertaining throughout the way and quotes and such. So if you are scared about starting this, I would suggest just giving it a try. Once you get past, I feel like the first few chapters, you're invested and you want to know what happens, and then you just keep going. So that is The Count of Monte Cristo. I would say this is my top book so far this year. It will be interesting to see what else I read the rest of this year that's gonna knock this one off. This is definitely something that I see myself rereading in the future too. Okay, so most disappointing of this year, definitely, unfortunately, the one that does come to mind is Half His Age by, I don't know if this is focusing, Half His Age by Jeanette McCurdy. I was really looking forward to this after reading her nonfiction that came out a few years back. I actually even went to the author event, and I heard her talk about this, and that was still really cool, even though I didn't like the book, but I got it signed, look. So it was cool to be in a room with her. She didn't do like pictures, so you didn't get to actually talk with her, but unfortunately I am here to talk about how this was one of my most disappointing books this year. I did end up giving this 2.5 stars for the rating. The story is definitely a tough subject matter. Like, if you are not familiar with what this is about, oh right, and her name is Waldo. That was another thing that just took me out of the story. So, because I kept picturing, where's Waldo? So anyways, we follow Waldo, who is she's in high school, right? And then she develops basically a crush on her creative writing teacher. And it's a story of like a character study of her being like a yearning 17-year-old and him obviously taking advantage of her. I felt like this is something that has been done before, right, in terms of like writing about teachers taking advantage of students, you know, inappropriate relationships, things like that. So I just felt like it needed to add something to that conversation that hasn't been said already. And because it's written from her point of view and she is young and naive, right, the way it's written, it's almost like, I don't want to say choppy, but it's a little like this happened, then this happened, then this happened, then this happened. And it's a super quick read. Like, if you're looking for something you could read in a day, that might also, you know, fuck you up a little bit, this could be it. I just wanted it to go deeper, I guess, is my critique of it. I did read My Dark Vanessa a few years back, and that's still like one of my favorite books. And there was just, what was done in that, I think, is what this was missing, which I don't know what I would say that is. Maybe just like the writing style, there was a level of commentary on it that was added to the story other than just being the teenager falling for the teacher and the teacher taking advantage of her. When I went to the author event, she did talk about like her intentions with the character and why it was written how it was. I will say, let me say I read this in January, so I went to the event and I think it was in January, so it's been a while. But the way she described her writing process was really interesting, but I just don't think it made the book work more for me, because those things, unfortunately, it just still were not there. But I would still pick up her next work. I do think that she has a lot of talent as a writer. And I have seen people that like this. This just unfortunately did not work for me. So maybe if that's something that sounds intriguing to you, or you would like to read from that type of point of view, I mean, it's worth giving a try, you know. And then another one that I would say comes standing out in my mind as unfortunately disappointing as well, which is ironic because this is another author event that I went to, Calabasas by R.F. Krong. This one, I did rate this 4 stars, so like thinking back, I would probably, it's more like a 3.5 to 4 in my mind, but definitely was still enjoyable for sure. The more so with this one is the disappointment factor. I just really wanted this to be 5 stars. I wanted it to be a new favorite, and I don't know if it was just the characters, really. I kind of didn't really care about their relationship. The concept was really cool. I like the whole going to hell to save their teacher, but then you don't really care about the teacher either. I don't know what I wanted to happen to make, like, I don't want to talk about spoilers for it, but I feel like if some things were changed, maybe I would have liked it better, but I don't know what those things would have been. Still a really interesting concept. I think it probably just was the characters for me in this, and she's not meant to be likable like our main character isn't. But yeah, I don't know. I think maybe it was just kind of the leaning into some of the romance elements in here that didn't work for me, but I will still be picking up her next book. It's actually another question on here is about like new releases you're excited for, so that is something that I will be looking forward to. Again, another very talented author, and there were definitely things in this that went over my head, right? There's a lot of talk of not geometry, but like I'm blanking, I'm sorry, y'all. The word's gonna come, paradoxes. There's so much talk of paradoxes, and that kind of threw me a little bit. But that wasn't the reason that I felt like I rated the book lower. Is more the characters, because I'm okay with feeling a little bit stupid sometimes. Like I'll catch up, I'll try to figure it out, you know. I actually almost wish there was a little bit more of that, I guess, in a way. But anyways, let's move on to the next question. Okay, so the next question is what was the most surprising book that you read this year? And for me, I would have to say Les Mis, actually. Because why was I entertained? I don't know why I went into this, and I thought I was going to be bored, which there are parts, okay, don't get me started about the Battle of Waterloo, because it was dragging. It was really dragging. There are times in this book where I was like, Hugo, come on, let's get to the point, you know? But overall, I ate this up. I was so invested. And I'll say I had not seen the movie before reading this. And the whole point of picking this up is because I actually went to see the play for the first time this year. So all I knew about Les Mis was this man gets locked up for stealing some bread, and the song slap. That's what I went into it with. So I did not know about like major plot points of the story and certain characters' deaths, or yeah, I did not know. So I was kind of going through it with this, honestly, because you just feel for these characters so much. And I'm so glad that I read The Count of Monte Cristo before this, because I read this in, I think it was April, and I read The Count of Monte Cristo in February, just because I feel like if I hadn't read another big book before this, I might have DNF'd. I did definitely have going to see the play as a motivation for this. But yeah, I think the surprising part about this was, again, I guess just how accessible it was, how invested I was in the story, and just how much these characters really stayed with me. Like, this is definitely called The Brick for a reason, because this was an investment. But I just love a good story now. I know we're talking about books, right? But like, just love a good story. I don't know if I would reread all of this, I will say. I think there are definitely some parts that I would skip. Maybe I would listen to the abridged audiobook in the future, but still just, I really enjoyed my time with this. I'm glad I made it through it, and I do recommend, if you, similar to The Count of Monte Cristo in a lot of ways, if you know you like reading about just characters going through it, getting out of that struggle. There are definitely the elements of revenge in this, but not to the same extent. I mean, it's more about obviously the barricades and revolution, you know, things like that. But if those are things that you are interested in, then I would recommend picking this up. I do also like this edition, I will say. Because the writing is, if anyone is just interested, it's not too small, you know, and I feel like if you're going to dedicate your time to a giant book like this, that is something to think about. Okay, so next question. I think I'm getting out of focus. Hang on. Okay, I might just be at a weird angle with the sun, so I apologize. The next question is favorite new to me author. So I was looking back, and I have not read any books this year that I read multiple of an author that I had not read before. So I was just going to mention some books that I read for the first time this year and definitely would like to pick up more of their work. First is going to be Red City by Marie Lu. I have not read Marie Lu's other books at all, and I definitely want to pick them up. I was surprised by how much I liked this. It definitely has like similar vibes with Alchemy as like Full Metal Alchemist, so if that's a story that you like or a show that you like, I would recommend picking this up. And I also really loved the relationship in this. One kind of critique thing or thing that sort of took me out of this a little bit, and the only reason I rated it 4 stars instead of 5 was the writing. In some ways it did feel like very YA at times, but then very serious things were happening, so it kind of threw me a little bit. Like I just wanted some parts, or not some parts, but I guess the whole book to be written in a slightly different style, if that makes sense. But other than that, like I really enjoyed this, so I will pick up her other work because every time there was like a twist or like something crazy was happening, I was like, I gotta get to the next chapter. So this was really fun. And then another book that I would definitely read more from the author is Deanna Gray, who wrote Outdrawn. This was my first book I read by her. This is a sapphic romance. And this was just so cute. I definitely would pick up some of her other work and just follow her characters. I really liked the character building in this, and I liked the concept. I thought it was really unique. So, yeah. And then the next question is, what is the most underrated book that you read this year? And I have 2 I want to talk about for that. The first one, I borrowed it from the library and I returned it, but I really need to buy a physical copy now because I keep thinking about this book. It was really good. It's called Elegy for the Undead by Matthew Vesely. This was just a really short book that really just kind of sits with you. So it's only 188 pages long, and it's about a gay couple who is, no, they are married, like they're newlyweds, and then a pandemic virus thing breaks out and one of them gets bitten and is turning into a zombie. So it is a zombie story, but it's very much like a zombie story as a metaphor for chronic illness, which I just thought was so well done. This was just beautifully written and sad, and yeah, everything I wanted from that. Another sad gay book that I also would mention for this is They Want Us Gone by Judith Sonnet. If you're not familiar with Judith Sonnet, she writes primarily like extreme horror, so if that is not your thing, maybe not for you. So just warning you with that. But They Want Us Gone, these stories are not as, like, I want to say they're not as extreme as some of her other stuff, but there is still like a level of, I guess, extremeness with like transphobia and homophobia and things like that. So like if you are sensitive to those things, I would not pick this up. But I just really liked what she did with this. There is a part where she's like, it's really meta, and she's like interviewing herself and kind of like a self-insert into the story, which I think would maybe not work for a lot of people. But I don't know, I want to say I had fun with this, but it was also super depressing. This might just be a niche audience, but if you really like, I don't know, gay visceral horror and like body horror and things, I would pick this up. And then the next question, I have to see my list. Okay, so next question is your favorite character, which is hard, but I feel like I think I would just give it to Edmond Dantes from Count of Monte Cristo, honestly, because it just stuck with me. I don't know. I think that's who I'm gonna go with. And then, a book that made you cry. Okay, I have something for this. Hang on. I don't think either of these books actually made me cry this year, but they both stand out in my mind as making me sad for different reasons. So the first one is actually one of the nonfiction I read this year, and it's The Eyes of Gaza by Palencia Alaquad, I think is how you say her last name. I am sorry, Palencia, if I mispronounced your last name. So if you don't know Palencia, she is a journalist that was in Gaza, and it is recounting her time in Gaza during the start of the genocide. So this is very much, real life account, diary entries, which is obviously why I would put it on books that would make you cry or sad, things like just because of, real life events. But I will say though, like, she just finds a way to have such a sense of humor, and her voice and her personality still shines through going through these super obviously traumatic situation and life and death, and you don't know if you're gonna make it to the next day, and you have jokes. So I don't know, I really did like her writing. I just think that she's so talented and just so vulnerable for also just putting this into the world and holding this thing that she made. Yeah, I would definitely recommend this recommend reading this, especially if you are not very familiar with what is happening with Gaza, you have not read much about it. I would recommend this as a starting point for just someone's real life perspective and being there. And then another book that came to mind for just a book that was sad, completely different vibes to this book, by the way, but Open Throat by Henry Roque. This is, I guess you would call it literary or experimental fiction. So you follow this mountain lion, right? It's from the perspective of the mountain lion living underneath the Hollywood sign. And tell me why this was sad. I was feeling for this cat, this big cat, and I don't know, y'all, everyone, I really recommend this book. I gave this 5 stars. This was amazing. And it's so short, that's the acknowledgement, so 156 pages. There's not much else I can tell you without getting into any spoilers of the book, but it's just him watching the people come into his area that he's staying under, and he watches over the homeless community, and this girl comes into play later on in the story, and it's just such a beautiful story. I don't know if this author has written other books, but I would check them out if he has. I'm sorry, every single one of these questions has you getting up to go and grab more books, so I should have planned more in advance for this. But the next question after books that made you sad is a book that made you happy, which I feel like I didn't read that many happy stories, but one that does stand out is And Now Back to You by B.K. Borson. I actually, I read this one and I read First Time Caller this year because I went to the B.K. Borison event for this book. But I ended up giving this 4 stars. I think I actually gave both of them 4 stars. But I want to say I enjoy this one a little bit more. Something I just really liked their banter. I really liked Jackson. This was just such a cute story. I really liked the element of like being locked in a snowstorm. I just thought that was fun. So if you haven't read B.K. Borison, I think that she's a very talented romance writer. I do want to pick up her other book that's coming out. It's what's it called, like Grim Tidings or something like that, because I read her Christmas one last year and I didn't really like it, but I see potential and I want to read the next one. So that was a book that made me happy. And then the next question is the most beautiful book that you own, or I don't know if it's supposed to be the most beautiful book that you like hauled this year. Anyways, I'm gonna answer it as the second part, like books I've bought this year that in the first half of the year that I feel like are the most beautiful in my collection. So I actually have the whole trilogy for this series. I'm sorry, I was trying to remember. I think it's like the Lake Witch series or something. My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones and the rest of that series. I'm not going to get you the other books, but this is the first one. And I love the artwork. It's so pretty. And like it looks like a VHS tape here. Like it's so cool. And then it also has like the cover is done too. So just such a pretty edition. And then another book I would mention is The Sword of Kagan. This was a like Kickstarter campaign and the book finally came in the mail after like a year. So but this is beautiful. I'm so obsessed with the sprayed edge and the inner pages and the cover. Just so pretty. Hi, sorry, my camera died, and also now I need to leave the house soon, so we are about to rapid fire these last few questions. So the next one is, I'm sorry, you are on my cat's cat tree, and I don't know what to do with this thing. So the next one is your most anticipated book for the second half of the year, or just in general, what books are you most anticipating? And I have a few for this. First is Summer Ween by Josh Wood. This actually comes out very soon, and I really wanted to read it for Summer Ween, but unfortunately my request for the art got declined because I have a really bad NetGalley score, but I am actively working on it, and I'm very excited for this to come out. It's basically just a romance that takes place in a summer Ween town, and it very much reminds me of like Halloween Town vibes, and I am excited to pick that up. And then a couple others I have on my list are the new R.F. Krong coming out. I think it's in September. Taipei story or a Taipei story. I'm probably saying that wrong. I honestly don't even know what this is about, but just everything she writes I will be picking up the next book. So excited for that. I'm also excited for Plant Lady by Min Young Khan. This is a translated book, I believe, and it just sounds really good, so I am interested in that. And then another one I had on my list was You're the One That I Haunt by Katie Young. This is a romance. I believe like she falls in love with a ghost, and that sounds very intriguing to me. I don't know why. Another one I had on my list was Our Cut of Salt by Dina Helm, and this is a horror written by a Palestinian author, so I'm very excited to support that. And then the last one I had for anticipated books was Astarion by T. Kingfisher. If you don't know, I've been very into playing Baldur's Gate recently, and while he's not my favorite character, I think he's a very entertaining character, so I'm excited to see what she does with that, for sure. And then the next question is your best audiobook. I definitely listened to quite a few books in tandem this year. So the audiobooks that stand out to me are, one I read recently was Disappoint Me. That was a really good on audio. And then whatever audiobook I listened to for Les Mis was honestly really good. Like, I was very invested in tandem reading when I was listening to that. And they definitely helped me with like the pronunciations and things like that too when I was reading along with the audio. The last question is what you need to be reading, like books you need to finish by the end of the year, and there are quite a few, obviously. I just want to mention a few that are in my 26 for 26 that I still have not read. So Buffalo Hunter by Stephen Graham Jones. I really need to read this. I should have read this, but I heard it's really set in like winter, so I might put it off to the fall. Another one that I've heard nothing but great things about is How the Bird Has Passed. I've owned this for honestly like a couple of years, or at least a year and a half, and again, heard great things about this. This is a nonfiction. I'm really excited to get into this and learn more. And then a fantasy that I have that I need to read is The Isle in the Silver Sea. I haven't heard that many people talk about this, but it sounds really intriguing. It's like Lady Knights and it's sapphic. Sounds great. I should have probably read it, so hopefully I'll get to this soon. But if you watched this whole video, thank you so much for joining. Let me know what your best read of the year was so far. Let me know what you're looking forward to. Maybe I'll post again soon. Maybe you'll see me in 2 years. You know, who knows? But make it a great day. Bye. Were you sleeping? You were sleeping. Say hi, Udon. Say hi.